Alright, Minuteman National Historical Park. This is probably the park that I know the most about its history, but before I get to that, I do want to read you the description from the official guide to America's National Parks, 13th edition. It's a Minuteman National Historical Park located in eastern Massachusetts in Concord, Lincoln, and Lexington. Yes, it's a fairly big park. You can, if you got time and you feel like it, you can probably walk the distance of the whole park. Preserved here are the historic sites, structures, and landscapes associated with the events of April 19th, 1775, and the beginning of the American Revolution. The North Bridge, Minuteman statue, and Battle Road are global symbols of man's universal struggle for freedom and independence. The park also celebrates the 19th century literary renaissance at the Wayside, home of Nathaniel Hawthorne, Louisa May Alcott, and Margaret Sidney. The Battle Road Trail winds through the area while Hartwell Tavern explores a more raucous side of 18th century life. The park was authorized on September 21st, 1959. Busiest in July and October. Least crowded December to February. That's because it's bone-chilling cold. There's no entrance fees for the actual park, but if you want to visit the Wayside building where the authors lived, that's $5 for adults, free ages 16 and under. When I went, it was closed for renovations. I don't think it's for a very extended period of time, certainly not more until the end of the year, but beyond the end of the year, I mean. But you can see it from the outside there, they had a lot of scaffolding around there and stuff, though, so you couldn't really appreciate it, but I did get footage of it anyway. And for those of you who don't know, Nathaniel Hawthorne, he wrote some very good books. One of them was The Last of the Mohican. Louisa May Alcott, more of a writer for girls. She wrote Little Women and Little Men and all that cute stuff. Unfortunately, I had to read it anyway, Little Women. For a guy, go with Nathaniel Hawthorne instead, please. And Margaret Sidney, she wrote children's books. Hartwell Tavern is interesting. That one was boarded up for the season still. I don't know why. It looked like it would have been pretty cool inside, though, kind of like the Green Dragon Inn. So the park commemorates the beginning of the Revolutionary War. That is when the British troops landed, the colonists found out about it, and one of the main battles was at the Old North Bridge. Now, eventually, after a day or so of fighting, the Americans drove out the British, but not for long, of course. The British came back with reinforcements, and of course there was that whole big thing called the Revolutionary War. The British troops came, and the colonists did not want to be the first ones to shoot. They didn't want to go down in history as that. No one actually knows for sure who fired first, but it's said that the British weren't going to fire, but one of them was nervous and accidentally fired, and then of course, well, that poor soul started the Revolutionary War. Oh, and then there's also the site where Paul Revere was captured. He was riding with two other guys. One of them was Prescott, and the other, it's in the Junior Ranger booklet. Let me look, I'll be showing you that in just a moment. That was probably my favorite of the Junior Ranger programs. A little more difficult. Yeah, he was riding with Prescott and Dawes. So they were riding together. They came across a battalion of British troops. Paul Revere was captured. The other two managed to escape. And actually, Paul Revere was released the next morning just without his horse. So things were, war was a lot more respectable, if you will, back in the day. Unlike today, where people just start killing each other for no apparent reason. Back then, they only killed if they had to, pretty much. So the Paul Revere capture site, and then right next to it is the Battle Road Trail. I accidentally passed right by the Paul Revere capture site, and I was like, where is this thing? I was walking the Battle Road Trail, and finally went back, and I was like, oh, there it is. It's just a little monument there. It's nothing big, but I still think it's pretty cool that you're standing in the exact spot, or at least the approximate spot, where Paul Revere is captured. And that was the town of, I know it's here, Lincoln. It's in the town of Lincoln. It's between Lexington and Concord. So some of the questions were hard to answer just because you couldn't go inside the buildings and read about them and stuff. But I managed. I believe for this one it would be 5 activities. Takes about 2 hours or more. I'd say a little more than that, at least 3 or 4 hours. 3 pages and 2 extra activities. Some of the extra activities were impossible to do, though, but I managed to do a couple. And some of them are extremely easy, and some of them will take a little more time. If you got the time, then you should do the more advanced ones. Those are some of the authors, some of the works that they wrote. Nathaniel Hawthorne also wrote The Scarlet Letter. And there's some pictures of them. I had never heard of the other lady, Harriet Lothrop. She was Margaret Sidney. Her pen name was Margaret Sidney. But her real name is Harriet Lothrop. I bet you didn't know that. If you're like me, you never even heard of her before. Right now. Unless you've been to the park before. So, nice little Junior Ranger booklet there. And here's the badge. Minuteman National Historical Park. And here's a pin for it. That is the Minuteman statue right next to the Old North Bridge. You'll be seeing that in the video. Here's a hiking stick medallion. And a few stamps there, not nearly as many as Boston National Historical Park, of course. If I can find it here. I know I have to stamp these in both of them. There's the Freedom's Way National Heritage Area stamp. That's both in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. This is pretty close to the New Hampshire border. Fairly close, anyway. There's the stamp for the North Bridge Visitor Center, and then here in the other one is the other stamps, one for the Wayside Building in Concord, and then another one for the Minuteman Visitor Center. There's also one for the Freedom's Way National Heritage Area. Actually, I think, yeah, I already have that one. So I guess I did get a couple repeats, but nothing too bad. So, let me go ahead and read you this about Saugus Iron Works. Established in 1646, the reconstructed ironworks celebrates the first successful iron-producing complex in North America. Iron rendering technology converted raw materials into cast and wrought iron products for the infant colonies. Sorry, I forgot to read that to you earlier. Oh, and then there's also, I think this is the only national stamp I have for a park that I've actually visited. So that's pretty cool. For Minuteman National Historical Park, that was for the 2000 national stamp. Minuteman National Historical Park commemorates the opening day of the American Revolution, April 19th, 1775. Colonial militiamen took up arms in defense of their rights and clashed with British regulars, thus igniting a war that would lead to the creation of an independent nation. For those of you who don't know, that's the United States of America. Shown is the park's Battle Road in front of the Hartwell Tavern, a National Park Service initiative lighting freedom's flame. The American Revolution 225th will run from 2000 to 2008, so that's long over now, to enhance public understanding of the varied meanings and enduring legacy of the Revolution. So I guess that's old news. So, if you visit either Boston or Minuteman, I'd highly recommend going to the other. If you only got time for one, I might actually recommend Minuteman, just because not nearly as many crowds. And it's definitely out there in the wilderness a lot more than Boston National Historical Park. So there's some nice scenery, there's some birds singing, and some nice pretty flowers around the area too. Well, if you thought the Saugus Ironworks were remote, well, you haven't been to the Minuteman, I believe it's in that, yeah, the National Historical Park. Because to get here, this is the North Bridge Visitor Center. There are 2 main visitor centers, and one is a little further south. But I think this is the main one. But to get here, you have to pass through some real remote territory. And even out here you can see not a lot of houses or anything here, but there are a substantial amount of people here. Certainly not as many as Boston, but way more than Saugus. So this is kind of in the middle between those two. Lots of robins and stuff out here. And this, of course, is where it was the general area where the Battle of Lexington and Concord took place. The start of the Revolutionary War, where the British troops marched in, tried to take the colonists' weapons away from them. The British fired first, and, well, we had to fight back, didn't we? So a lot of history here, a lot of walking that you can do, or you can drive if you don't feel like walking. So, we'll try and see quite a bit of it. site where Paul Revere is captured, and Dawes and Samuel Prescott managed to escape and warn other people about the British arrival. We're now at the main Minuteman Visitor Center. We originally started out at the one near the bridge. This one's quite a ways further away, but it's closer to the other places such as the tavern and the Wayside House. So this will probably be, this is like the last stop, or if you're coming from the other direction, it's the first stop. And you can watch a half-hour video here about the history that's in this place. Yeah, it's a nice looking area. You have to walk the little trail to get here from the parking lot. But nothing too strenuous. And you can walk down there as well. Alright, the final park is Lowell. I got less footage of that one than I did of Salem, if you can believe that. But I think it was more worth my time getting footage at Boson and Minuteman and Saugus. Because Lowell, while it commemorates an important part of history, was not very pretty, I have to say. But it commemorates the Industrial Revolution, so what do you expect? Actually, before I say that, let me read you the description for Lowell. Lowell National Historical Park in northeast Massachusetts in... Did I hear you say Lowell? Yeah, it's in Lowell. Wow, you guys are smart. America's Industrial Revolution is commemorated at this park, which includes the Suffolk Mill Turbine and authentic Mill Girl boarding houses. The main site is the Boot Cotton Mills Museum, which encloses a weave room of 88 operating rooms. Altogether, the informative exhibits document the Northeast transition from farm to factory, as well as the history of immigrant labor. The site was authorized on June 5th, 1978. Personally, I prefer the days of the farms more than the days of the factories. You can take some tours, either guided or self-guided. There's the Visitor Center, there's a museum, and there's a movie. I did get to see the movie, but of course I couldn't film the movie. There's exhibits, there's tours, there's trolleys, boat tours for the canal, and there's also some walking tours. There's not going to be very pretty, I'll tell you that. Tips and hints. Tours go out rain or shine. Busiest May to July, least crowded December to February. It's free. If you want to take a canal tour, it's going to cost you a bit. $8 for adults, $6 for ages 6 to 16, and $7 for ages 62 and over. Free if you're 5 or younger. Trolley tours are free. And there's a small fee for the Boot Cotton Mills Museum, which I did not get to see. Smaller than the canal tour. And that's about it. It says in here. So yes, it commemorates the Industrial Revolution. This is kind of like the spot where some of it all began, kind of like Saugus Iron Works is where the iron making all began. There's a couple more things. Here are the official cancellations from Lowell. That's the really official one. Then we have one from the Lower Locks Gatehouse. One for the Moody Street Feeder Gatehouse. Another for the River Transformed exhibit. And finally one for Pawtucket Gatehouse. So a lot of gatehouses. And I do not have a regional stamp for Lowell. I don't think there is one. If there is, I'm not aware of it. And honestly, to be honest, how redundant of me. Anyway, there's a lot of other national parks in the North Atlantic region that deserve a stamp just before Lowell does. Just my opinion. Here's the Junior Ranger booklet, a pretty simple one. You had to do 5 pages in here, and that one does not count, I don't think. So they have the list here. They got some word searches, and some of the stuff is at the museums and stuff, so I couldn't fill that out. There's some pictures of some of the other stuff that I didn't get to film. But yeah, it's all brick. It's an all brick area for the most part, and certainly not the prettiest place I've ever seen. And I don't think I've mentioned this yet, but I found this at Lowell. It's the America's National Parks Civil War Handbook. And this is the last park I visited on my trip, so I didn't get anything else stamped. And I thought I was going to be able to order some stamps to put in here for the ones I've already been to, but I tried it, and no one ever got back with me. They probably just think I'm trying to cheat them because they've never really been there, which I can understand, but it would be nice if they would do that. But let me see. They're arranged in alphabetical order of state, and each time you visit one of the Civil War themed national parks, you can get it stamped down here. And right now, Lowell's the only one I've done. And finally, we have a couple of our badges here. Well, here's the actual Junior Ranger badge. It's not different like Saugus and Boston were, or Salem for that matter. Just a pretty basic one. And here I got one of the pins, different looking from some of the other ones. Alright, this is the Visitor Center for the Lowell National Historical Park. Not a whole lot to see and do here. That's a little more, I believe, north of here. You got the museum and some of the other, like the loom areas and stuff. Fortunately, I don't have time to visit those. Trying to get as many national parks as I can, get my passport canceled and stuff. But I'll try and come up with some informative stuff about that. Fortunately, there wasn't a whole lot here, but I'll see what I can do so that I can teach you guys a bit about the Lowell National Historical Park, which kind of commemorates the beginning of the Industrial Revolution in the United States of America.